The morning sky over New York blazed with an unnatural light. It started as a gentle shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot pavement, but within minutes it transformed into a massive shape that blocked out the sun. The object that appeared was unlike anything humanity had ever seen, a vessel so large it cast a shadow over the entire city. Commander James Walker stood at the window of the United Nations building, his weathered face reflecting in the glass as he watched the alien ship hover above the city. 25 years in Earth's defense force hadn't prepared him for this moment. No one was prepared. The first message came at exactly 9:00 a.m. Eastern Time. Every television screen, radio, phone, and computer across the planet suddenly displayed the same transmission. The aliens didn't bother with pleasantries. "People of Earth," the message began, its translation perfect in every language simultaneously. "We are the Galactic Council, governing body of the civilized systems. Your planet has been evaluated and deemed worthy of integration. You will provide tribute of 30% of all planetary resources, renewable and non-renewable, to be collected annually. This is non-negotiable." In the UN General Assembly Hall, hundreds of world leaders sat in stunned silence. Some wept quietly, others argued in hushed whispers, but most simply stared at the screens showing the massive ship above. Walker made his way to the podium where the Secretary General stood frozen. "Sir," he said quietly, "we need to convene the Security Council immediately." The emergency meeting that followed was chaos. Representatives from every major military power argued about their options. The Russian general wanted to launch everything they had. The Chinese admiral suggested immediate surrender to protect their people. The American president called for diplomacy. "We can't fight them," the British Prime Minister said, her voice shaking. "Look at the size of that ship. They could wipe us out without blinking." Walker stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "With all due respect, we don't know that. We haven't even tried to understand what we're dealing with." As if responding to his words, another message boomed across the planet. "To demonstrate our authority, we will now disable your primary defense systems." In military bases across the world, missile silos slammed shut. Nuclear submarines lost power. Fighter jets wouldn't start. In just 30 seconds, Earth's most powerful weapons became useless. Walker watched the panic spread across the faces of Earth's leaders. But something caught his attention. A detail in the alien transmission that others had missed. They had disabled weapons systems. Yes, but they'd done it using Earth's own communication networks. Why would such an advanced civilization rely on human infrastructure? He pulled out his old flip phone, a habit his staff always mocked him for keeping. Unlike the smart devices around the room that were still broadcasting the alien message, his simple phone worked perfectly. Walker smiled for the first time that day. "Mr. Secretary General," he said, standing up, "I request permission to form a special task force. There's something about these aliens we need to investigate." The Secretary General looked at him with tired eyes. "Commander Walker, they've just disabled every major weapon we have. What could your task force possibly do?" Walker looked around the room at the frightened faces of Earth's leaders. "They may have shut down our newest tech, but humanity didn't start with nuclear weapons and smart bombs. We started with simple tools, with basic science, with human ingenuity. Maybe that's exactly what we need now." The room fell silent as his words sank in. Finally, the Secretary General nodded. "You have 48 hours to show us something useful, Commander. After that, we'll have to consider their demands." As Walker left the room, the alien ship still looming over the city, he thought about humanity's long history of facing supposedly unbeatable odds. The Galactic Council might have advanced technology, but they just made a crucial mistake. They'd underestimated human determination. The real question was, what else were they underestimating about Earth? The underground bunker hummed with activity. 48 hours after the aliens' arrival, Commander Walker had turned an old Cold War facility into Earth's last hope. Scientists and military experts from around the world worked at stations filled with older, simpler technology, equipment that still functioned despite the aliens' interference. Dr. Tom Reed, a quantum physicist with thick glasses and messy gray hair, burst into Walker's makeshift office. "Commander, you need to see this." His hand shook as he spread printouts across the desk. "We've been studying the energy readings from their ship, their shields. They're quantum-based, but there's something odd about them." Walker leaned forward. "Odd how?" "They're perfect. Too perfect." Reed pointed to a graph. "Natural quantum fields have tiny fluctuations, but theirs don't. It's like they've never had to deal with interference." Before Walker could respond, Mary Parker, their communications expert, rushed in. "Sir, we've made contact with someone. Something. Out there. They're using old radio frequencies, ones the Council apparently ignores." The message they received came from a species called the Watchers. They had been observing the Council for centuries, gathering intelligence from the shadows. According to them, Earth was the 48th world to receive the Council's offer. No planet had ever successfully refused. Walker gathered his team in the main room. Maps and charts covered the walls, showing the alien ship's position and every scrap of data they'd collected. "What do we know about the other worlds?" he asked. Mary consulted her notes. All technologically advanced, all heavily dependent on quantum computing and AI, all conquered within days of refusing tribute. "And what happened when they surrendered?" Walker asked. "The Council stripped them of resources until their civilizations collapse. They're basically slave worlds now," Mary replied, her voice tight with anger. Dr. Reed raised his hand like an excited schoolboy. "But that's just it, Commander. None of those worlds were like Earth. We still use primitive technology alongside our advanced systems, and our planet's magnetic field. It's unique in this sector of space." Walker walked to the window of the underground facility, looking at the old radio equipment they'd gathered. "So we're primitive by their standards. But maybe that's our advantage." He turned to face his team. "What if we could use Earth's magnetic field somehow?" Reed's eyes widened. "They're quantum shields. They're calibrated for space. They've never had to account for a magnetic field like ours. If we could amplify it somehow." "The radio telescopes." Mary jumped up. "We have arrays all over the planet. If we modified them." Walker nodded, a plan forming in his mind. "How long would it take?" "A week, maybe 2, Reed calculated. But Commander, the Council only gave us 30 days total. If we fail." "Then we fail trying," Walker said firmly. "Better than surrendering and watching our world die slowly." As the team rushed to work, a young technician approached Walker. "Sir, we've decoded more of the Watcher's message. The Council, they're not just collecting tribute. They're harvesting worlds. Once they drain a planet of resources, they move on to the next. They've been doing this for thousands of years." Walker watched his people work, determination on every face. Earth's greatest minds working with technology the Council considered obsolete. Technology they probably hadn't thought about in centuries. "Get me the Secretary General," he ordered. "Tell him we have a plan, but we'll need every radio telescope on Earth. And tell him to keep our advanced systems powered down. Let the Council think we're accepting our fate." As he looked at the radar screen showing the massive alien ship still hovering above New York, Walker smiled. The Council had conquered 47 worlds, all of them more advanced than Earth. But they'd never faced a planet that still remembered how to fight with the basics. Sometimes, he thought, being primitive had its advantages. Late at night in the underground bunker, Dr. Reed stared at his computer screen until his eyes burned. 2 weeks had passed since the Council's arrival, and time was running out. Empty coffee cups littered his desk, testament to the endless hours of work. Suddenly, he knocked over his latest cup, spilling coffee across his notes. But he didn't notice. His eyes were fixed on the screen, where a simulation was showing something impossible. "Commander Walker," he shouted, his voice echoing through the quiet facility. "Commander, wake up." Walker appeared within minutes, his uniform wrinkled from sleeping in his office. "This better be good, Reed." "Look at this." Reed pointed to his screen. "We've been thinking about their shields all wrong. They're not just quantum-based. They're a single quantum field wrapped around their ships. One field, one frequency." Walker rubbed his tired eyes. "In simple English, please. It's like they're wearing the same armor on every ship," Reed explained. "Perfect armor, yes, but identical. They've never needed different types because no one's ever broken through it." Before Walker could respond, Mary burst into the room. "Sir," the Watchers sent another message. "The Council. They've never encountered a planet with such a strong magnetic field. They think it's interfering with their scans. That's why they're staying in high orbit." Walker looked between them. "Are you both saying what I think you're saying?" Reed nodded excitedly. "Earth's magnetic field is already affecting them. They compensate with their quantum shields, but if we could disrupt that compensation..." He typed rapidly, bringing up another simulation. "Look what happens when we hit their shield frequency with a focused radio wave, amplified by our magnetic field." The simulation showed the alien shield failing completely. Walker leaned closer. "How do we generate a wave that powerful?" "We already have the technology," Mary said, grinning. "Every radio telescope on Earth, linked together, modified to transmit instead of receive. The magnetic field will multiply the power exponentially." "But here's the beautiful part," Reed added. "Regular radio waves. They'll think it's just noise. Their advanced sensors probably filter out what they consider primitive signals. They won't see it coming." Walker straightened up. "How long to modify the telescopes?" "The basic work is done," Mary replied. "Teams around the world have been making the changes while keeping up normal operations. The Council thinks we're just studying the stars, accepting our fate." Walker walked to the main window of the facility, looking at the old satellite dishes outside. Humanity's first attempts to reach the stars, now possibly their best defense against them. "Any word from the other Council ships?" he asked. Mary checked her reports. "Still gathering at the edge of the solar system. The Watchers say it's their standard invasion fleet. They bring it in when planets try to resist." "How many?" 50 ships. All identical." Reed's eyes gleamed. "All using the exact same shield frequency." Walker nodded slowly. "So if we can bring down one shield, we can bring down all of them," Reed finished. "Sir, this could work. It really could work." A young technician knocked on the door. "Commander, the Secretary General is asking for an update. We have 13 days until the Council's deadline." Walker looked at his team, then at the old equipment that might save humanity. "Tell him we're ready for a test, but we'll need him to call in a few favors. I want every radio telescope on Earth under our control within 48 hours. As his team rushed to prepare, Walker thought about the irony of the situation. The Council had disabled Earth's advanced weapons, thinking they'd left humanity defenseless. Instead, they'd forced humanity to look backward, to rediscover the power of their oldest tools. In 13 days, the Council would learn an important lesson. Sometimes the simplest solutions were the most powerful, and humanity had never been good at taking orders from bullies, not even galactic ones. The great radio telescope at Arecibo wasn't dead after all. Under the cover of night, teams of engineers swarmed over its structure, bringing the sleeping giant back to life. Similar scenes played out at radio telescopes across the globe, from the deserts of Australia to the mountains of Chile. Commander Walker watched the live feeds from his underground command center. "Status report," he called out to his team. "Very large array in New Mexico is online," Mary reported, checking her monitors. "China's fast telescope is ready. Green Bank is standing by. We're at 60% global coverage." Dr. Reed rushed in, his lab coat stained with grease. He'd spent the last 3 days personally modifying equipment. "The frequency modulators are holding steady," Each telescope is calibrated to exactly the same wavelength. What about power? Walker asked. Every major power grid on Earth has been diverted to support this. Mary pointed to a global map showing energy flows. We're telling the Council it's part of our tribute preparation, gathering resources for them. Walker nodded. The Council's massive ship still hung over New York, a constant reminder of the threat they faced. Smaller scout ships patrolled the atmosphere, watching Earth's apparent submission. Sir, a young technician approached with a tablet. We're getting reports from the Watchers. The Council's invasion fleet is moving closer. They're not buying our act completely. Walker wasn't surprised. How long until they're in position? 8 days, same as our deadline. In the corner of the room, international news played silently on various screens. The public story was simple. Earth was preparing to pay tribute. Markets were crashing. People were panicking. But that actually helped sell the deception. The Council would expect a planet to fall apart when facing submission. Dr. Reed pulled up a new simulation on the main screen. Look at this, Commander. When we activate all telescopes simultaneously, the signal will be amplified by Earth's magnetic field by a factor of 10,000. Nothing could maintain quantum coherence under that kind of disruption. But we only get one shot, Mary added. The moment we switch from receiving to transmitting, they'll know something's wrong. We have to hit every ship in the first wave. Walker studied the tactical display. Tiny dots showed the positions of every radio telescope under their control. How many more do we need? At least 20% more coverage to guarantee signal strength, Reed replied. The magnetic field will help, but we need as many transmission points as possible. Walker pressed a button on his comm. Get me the Secretary General. Tell him we need those last few stations, whatever it takes. As his team worked, Walker walked to a small side room where they kept older equipment. He picked up a simple radio receiver, the kind barely more sophisticated than what Marconi had used. These simple devices still worked perfectly, unaffected by the Council's technology. A memory surfaced from his military training years ago. His instructor had taught them to always keep backup communications, saying sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Walker doubted the instructor had been thinking about alien invasions at the time. Mary's voice called him back. Commander, we've got movement. 3 Council scout ships are descending through the atmosphere. Everyone froze, watching the tactical display. The alien ships moved in a perfect triangle formation, dropping lower over the Pacific Ocean. They're scanning the radio telescopes, Reed reported, monitoring the energy readings. Standard sweep pattern. Walker smiled. Let them scan. Let them see exactly what they expected to see. A primitive species scrambling to gather resources for tribute. Let them think their quantum shields made them invincible. Sir, Mary looked up from her station. The Secretary General got us access to the last major stations we needed. Global coverage will be at 90% in 6 hours. Walker nodded, looking at the countdown clock on the wall. 7 days, 18 hours until the deadline. One chance to prove that humanity's primitive technology could defeat the most advanced shields in the galaxy. Keep working, he ordered. And remember, we're not just fighting for Earth now. We're fighting for every world these bullies have enslaved. The old radio equipment hummed in the background, a reminder that sometimes the simplest tools were the most powerful. Earth was ready to teach the galaxy that lesson. The day of the deadline dawned clear and cold. The Council's massive ship still loomed over New York, its shadow a dark reminder of what Earth faced. In the underground command center, Commander Walker stood before his team, checking the final preparations. All stations report ready, Mary announced, her voice steady despite the tension. Every radio telescope is aligned. Power systems are at maximum capacity. Dr. Reed monitored his instruments with shaking hands. The Council's invasion fleet has entered position, 50 ships in attack formation. The main screen showed the Council's message, broadcasting worldwide. Your time for compliance has ended. What is your response? Walker took a deep breath. They'd planned this moment carefully. Every word mattered. He pressed the transmit button on his old radio set. "This is Commander James Walker of Earth. We have a message for the Galactic Council." The Council's reply came instantly. "Speak." Walker smiled. "Humanity has considered your demand for tribute. Here's our answer. We do not negotiate with extortionists." Silence filled the command center. On the tactical display, the Council's invasion fleet began to move. Multiple ships entering atmosphere, Mary called out. "They're deploying in standard attack formation." Walker nodded to Reed. "Now." Reed's fingers flew across his keyboard, transmitting in 3, 2, 1. Across the planet, hundreds of radio telescopes swiveled in perfect unison. Each massive dish stopped receiving and began to transmit, sending out carefully calibrated radio waves. The simple, primitive signals rose up through Earth's magnetic field, growing stronger, combining into one massive pulse. On the main screen, energy readings spiked off the charts. "Direct hit," Reed shouted. "Their quantum shields are destabilizing." The Council's command ship shuddered visibly in the sky. Its perfect shield flickered like a dying light bulb. Smaller ships began to waver in their formation. "They're trying to compensate," Mary reported, "switching frequencies. But they can't adapt fast enough." Walker watched as the Council's supposedly invincible shields began to fail. One by one, their ships lost their protective barriers, exposed to normal space for the first time in perhaps thousands of years. The Council's response was immediate. "What is this primitive trickery? Your weapons were disabled." "Not all of them," Walker replied calmly. "You forgot about our oldest tools, a mistake many have made when facing humanity." Suddenly, military channels across the globe crackled to life. Missile silos opened. Fighter jets roared to life. Naval vessels powered up their weapons. Everything the Council had disabled was working again, now that their control systems were exposed. "Sir," Mary pointed to her screen, "we're getting signals from other worlds, the subject planets. They're rising up. The Council's control systems are failing everywhere." The massive Council ship tried to rise higher, attempting to escape Earth's magnetic field. But it was too late. Their perfect quantum shields, calibrated for the sterile environment of space, couldn't handle the combination of Earth's magnetic field and the focused radio waves. "Status report," Walker commanded. 47 Council ships have lost shields completely," Reed reported with glee. "The rest are failing. Their weapons can't penetrate our magnetic field without their quantum systems. They're defenseless." Walker picked up his radio again. "Attention, Galactic Council. Perhaps we should discuss new terms, but this time, Earth will do the talking." On screens around the world, people watched in awe as the mighty Council ships hung powerless in the sky. Humanity's primitive technology, the simple radio waves they'd first sent into space over a century ago, had brought down the galaxy's greatest power. "Commander," Mary called out, "the Watchers are broadcasting to every liberated world. They're calling it the Day of Freedom." Walker looked at his team, pride filling his chest. "No," he said quietly. "Call it the day humanity reminded the galaxy of something important. Never underestimate the power of simple things. And never, ever demand tribute from Earth." Above them, the Council's ships remained frozen, their invincible shields defeated by the very technology they had dismissed as primitive. In the hours following the shield's collapse, Earth's military forces moved with precision and speed. Fighter jets circled the disabled Council ships, while warships at sea targeted the lower-flying vessels. Commander Walker watched from the command center as humanity seized its moment. "All Council ships remain powerless," Mary reported, monitoring global communications. "Their quantum systems can't reactivate inside our magnetic field." Dr. Reed hadn't left his station for hours. "They're trying to broadcast some kind of emergency signal, but our radio waves are drowning them out. They're cut off from any reinforcements." Walker studied the tactical display. The Council's massive command ship still hung above New York, but now it looked less like a threat and more like a trapped animal. Status of the boarding teams. Ready for launch, Mary replied. Special Forces units from 20 nations are in position. They're using modified spacesuits, completely mechanical, no advanced electronics that the Council might still control. Walker nodded. It was time for the next phase. Give the order. Take that command ship. Around the world, humanity's counterattack began. Special Forces teams launched from aircraft using simple rocket packs, technology barely more advanced than what had first taken humans to the moon. The Council's automated defense systems, designed to stop advanced weapons, didn't even register these primitive approaches. First team has breached the command ship, Mary announced. They're saying the aliens are surrendering. They've never had to fight without their technology. Reed looked up from his instruments. Similar reports from other ships. The Council species, they've relied on their quantum shields for so long, they've forgotten basic combat. Walker watched as more teams boarded the alien vessels. The Council's mighty armada, which had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, was being captured by humans using basic weapons and simple tactics. Sir, a young technician rushed in. We're getting transmissions from other worlds. The Council's subject planets. They're fighting back. Our radio wave attack weakened the Council's control systems everywhere. On the main screen, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Species that had lived under Council control for generations were rising up. The quantum technology that had kept them enslaved was failing, brought down by Earth's primitive radio waves. Commander, Mary called out, the Council's leader is asking to speak with you. They're offering to surrender. Walker straightened his uniform, put them on screen. The alien that appeared looked nothing like the powerful being they'd imagined. Without its technology, it seemed almost fragile. How? It asked simply. How did primitives defeat our perfect systems? That was your mistake, Walker replied. You thought newer meant better. You forgot that simple solutions can be the most powerful. Humanity never forgot its roots, never abandoned its basic technology. That's not primitive. That's wisdom. The alien leader seemed to shrink. What are your terms? First, you'll free every world you've enslaved. Then you'll face justice from all the species you've terrorized. Earth will make sure of that. As the alien leader agreed to these terms, cheers erupted in the command center. But Walker raised his hand for quiet. Mary, send word to our teams. Secure their quantum technology. Dr. Reed, I want you to study it. Not to use it, but to understand it. To make sure no one can ever use it to enslave others again. Sir, Mary said, smiling, the Watchers are calling Earth the Great Liberator. They're saying we've started a new age in the galaxy. Walker looked at his team, at the old radio equipment that had saved humanity, at the simple tools that had brought down an empire. No, he said, we just reminded the galaxy of something important. True strength isn't about having the most advanced technology. It's about remembering where you came from, and never letting anyone tell you that your ways are primitive. Above them, the Council's ships were being secured one by one, their crews surrendering to humans who had dared to fight back with the simplest of weapons. Courage, creativity, and radio waves that were older than the Council itself. The galaxy would never be the same, and humanity was just getting started. 1 month after the Council's surrender, the New York skyline had changed. Where once the Council's ship had cast a threatening shadow, now it served as humanity's first galactic embassy. Commander Walker stood at its command center, now transformed into a meeting hall where representatives from 50 alien species gathered. The last Council prison world has been freed, Mary reported, her uniform now bearing the New Earth Defense Force insignia. Every enslaved species is returning home. Some of them had been under Council control for thousands of years. Dr. Reed rushed in, excited as always. Commander, you won't believe what we've learned from their quantum technology. The Council didn't just stop developing new ideas. They actively prevented other species from innovating. They were terrified of new solutions that might threaten their power. Walker nodded, looking out at the transformed ship. And that was their biggest mistake. They forgot that progress doesn't always mean moving forward. Sometimes it means remembering what worked in the past. The meeting hall filled with representatives from across the galaxy. Some floated, some crawled, some walked on many legs, but all shared the same look of hope. Earth had done more than defeat the Council. It had shown the galaxy a new way forward. "Sir," Mary said, checking her simple radio communicator, "the first votes are in. The Galactic Alliance Charter has been approved. Earth's proposal for technological freedom is the first law they've passed." The new law was simple. No species could force its technology on another. The galaxy would embrace diversity, not just of life, but of technology. Advanced quantum systems would work alongside simple radio waves. Progress would mean finding the right tool, not just the newest one. "Commander," a young aide approached. "The Watchers are here. They want to thank Earth personally." The Watchers turned out to be small, gentle beings who had spent centuries gathering intelligence on the Council. Their leader stepped forward. "We watched countless worlds fall to the Council. We thought resistance was impossible. But Earth taught us that impossible just means finding a different way." Walker smiled. "We just did what humanity has always done. We adapted, used what we had. Proved that being called primitive isn't an insult if your simple solutions work better than complex ones." Around them, the former Council ship hummed with activity. Teams of humans and aliens worked together, combining technologies old and new. Earth's primitive radio waves now worked alongside quantum systems, each technology filling gaps the other couldn't cover. Dr. Reed had set up a new science division, teaching other species about Earth's simpler technologies while learning from their advanced systems. "It's amazing," he told Walker. "Some of these species had forgotten basic principles because they relied too much on quantum tech. They're relearning their own history through our primitive science." Mary approached with new reports. "The first joint patrol ships are ready, Commander. Each one carries both quantum drives and good old-fashioned radio. The galaxy's first truly hybrid vessels." Walker watched as ships from dozens of worlds flew past the windows, no longer afraid of Council demands for tribute. Earth had not only freed the galaxy, it had shown that true advancement meant remembering your roots. "Sir," Mary said softly, "they're asking what Earth wants as payment for saving them." Walker thought about humanity's long journey from simple radio waves to this moment. "Tell them we want what we've always wanted, to explore, to learn, to grow. Tell them Earth doesn't want payment. We want partners." As the sun set over New York, casting golden light across the transformed Council ship, Walker thought about how far humanity had come. They had faced the galaxy's greatest power with nothing but simple technology and determination. They had proved that being called primitive wasn't a weakness. It was a reminder that the oldest solutions could sometimes be the best ones. The galaxy had entered a new age, and humanity, with its mix of old and new, simple and advanced, would help lead the way into a future where no species would ever again be called primitive, only different.